When I graduated college, I didn't have a plan. I thought maybe I'd travel or apply for grad school or figure it out on the fly, but before I could even feel lost, my aunt called me with a job offer. She ran a daycare that was practically a local landmark. People adored her. She was known as the woman with infinite patience and the biggest heart. They called her the Mother Teresa of special needs care. Her daycare was always full, her rates low, and her waitlist long. She hosted fundraisers, organized free workshops, and helped single moms with no hesitation. So when she asked me to work with her, I felt honored, like I was stepping into something meaningful. My parents were thrilled. They said I was lucky to have such a caring role model, and for a while, I believed them. The first few weeks were sweet and simple: sticky fingers, snack time chaos, nap time songs. The kids were wonderful. Many of them had special needs, some nonverbal, some with sensory issues, a few with autism or Down syndrome. But every child radiated joy in their own way. I felt like I was part of something good, like I was doing something right. I remembered an old skill I'd forgotten about from high school. Back when I dated the boy who lived next door, his family lost Wi-Fi during hard times, and we started using flashlights and Morse code to talk at night. Silly teen stuff, flashing signals across our windows to say goodnight or share inside jokes. I hadn't thought about Morse code in years. I never imagined it would matter again until one day during story time, I heard it tap, 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 tap. My aunt's hand rested on the floor beside her rocking chair while she read to the kids, her fingers tapping quietly against the rug. Something about it felt too intentional. I wasn't sure why it caught my attention, but instinct told me to pay attention, so I did. I replayed the rhythm in my head and decoded it without thinking. It said the R word, a slur directed at people with disabilities. I was stunned. Maybe I misheard, maybe it was coincidence, but once I noticed it, I started hearing it more. Always while she was smiling, always while she looked at the most vulnerable kids. Stupid, burden, useless, disgusting, over and over. And it wasn't just words. Sometimes she'd tap instructions: take her after nap, quiet one, next problem child. Then a staff member would quietly lead a child out of the group room into the hallway, into the back, into what they called the learning room. The kids would return different, quieter, scared sometimes. They wouldn't talk for the rest of the day. One little girl, Emma, stopped making eye contact completely. She was nonverbal and had a history of early trauma. She clung to me whenever I was near. I started following them, not directly, but casually, pretending I needed to use the copier down the hall or walking past with a juice tray. I never caught anything obvious, just hushed voices and nervous smiles. But the kids, they looked broken. Afterward, one day, my aunt tapped, take the quiet one today. While glancing at Emma, my stomach dropped. I followed the staff down the hallway, pretended I forgot something, burst into the learning room with a big fake smile and said, oops, wrong room. Emma was sitting stiffly in a chair while a strange new helper stood nearby. He smiled too wide. Everyone played along. I acted airhead. They pretended nothing was wrong, but Emma's eyes said everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the tapping in my head. I started questioning everything. Was I imagining it? Was I paranoid? Was I making accusations without proof? But deep down, I knew the truth, so I made a plan. I needed more access. I needed them to drop their guard. So I dyed my hair a brighter blonde, started acting ditzy, forgot things on purpose, laughed at dumb jokes, played into every stereotype they wanted to believe, and it worked. They started letting me in on more things. My aunt even complimented my maturity and said I was learning fast. But the tapping never stopped, and the children still changed. Then one day, she tapped something different: picture day tomorrow, but there was nothing on our schedule. No flyers, no reminders, no consent forms, just that tap. The next morning, a man showed up with a camera bag. He introduced himself as Mr. Rowe, a traveling children's photographer. My aunt greeted him warmly. The kids lined up nervously when Emma saw him. She panicked. She grabbed my leg and started crying. My aunt rolled her eyes and said she was just being shy, but her fingers were tapping again. Problem, problem, problem. I offered to sit with Emma in another room during the photos. My aunt agreed too quickly. I watched from the window. Mr. Rowe took kids into the back room one by one. No assistance, no parent permission slips, no explanations, just click and smile over and over. After about an hour, he set his camera bag near my chair and went to the bathroom. My aunt was distracted talking to a parent. I saw my chance with trembling hands. I opened the bag. What I found made me sick. Not portraits, not headshots, but videos. Photos of children, some from weeks ago, some no longer enrolled, some clearly uncomfortable or scared. My vision blurred. I took pictures of the camera screen with my phone, then zipped the bag closed like nothing happened. I texted 911, discreetly explained I Suspected abuse, they said. Plainclothes officers were on the way. No sirens, no lights. Emma clung to my arm. I whispered that everything would be okay inside. I was screaming, Mr. Rowe returned and continued like nothing happened. My aunt's fingers were tapping again. Where is it? Where is it? I pretended to tie my shoe and pointed to the bag with my eyes. They bought it. Barely, Mr. Rowe said he had 3 more sessions. I stalled. I said it was snack time. My aunt's fingers drummed harder. Stop stalling. But I kept pushing. Said the kids were cranky. Said we'd get better smiles after crackers. Then Vicky, my coworker, returned from a coffee run. She didn't know anything was happening. Oh, we have a photographer today, she asked cheerfully. That's when I spotted movement outside. Unmarked cars, plain clothes. My heart pounded. Mr. Rowe began packing up quickly. My aunt grew pale. Her fingers tapped one word over and over. Problem, problem, problem. He tried heading for the back exit, but I knew the officers would have it covered. My aunt tried a different tactic. She greeted the officers warmly and said, "Our new helper's been acting a bit off lately." I kept my mouth shut until they asked Mr. Rowe about the bag. He hesitated. Sweat pooled on his forehead. Emma whimpered and pointed at him. The officer asked again, "Mind if we take a look?" My aunt jumped in. "Do you have a warrant?" The officer stayed calm. "He's free to say no," he replied, but the other officer blocked the exit. The air was thick with tension. Finally, Mr. Rowe placed the bag on the table and nodded stiffly. Inside were dozens of memory cards labeled by date, some going back years. My aunt's mask shattered. Her voice trembled, but her fingers didn't. Blame her, blame her, blame her, she said. I was unstable, that I'd had breakdowns before, that I had a history of wild stories, that she only kept me around out of pity. But the cops didn't buy it, not after seeing Emma, not after reviewing the images, not after noticing the other staff's nervous glances. The daycare was sealed off that night. Parents were called. Tears, panic, horror. I watched everything I thought I knew crumble, and I held Emma the entire time. The daycare was officially shut down the next morning. Police tape covered the entrance. Reporters waited outside. Parents stood on the sidewalk crying. Some screamed at each other. Others held their children tightly inside. The air felt hollow, like something dark had finally been dragged into the light. Emma sat in my lap the whole time. Vicky stared into space. She hadn't known, or at least that's what she told herself. She said she thought those sessions were extra therapy, that my aunt just liked privacy during special care, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. She cried when I told her what I'd found in the camera. The investigation started that same day. Police searched my aunt's house. What they found there shattered any remaining doubt. Closets full of toys, children's clothes that didn't belong to her, boxes of labeled items, old shoes, name tags. Missing reports matched some of the labels. There were ledgers with coded entries, receipts that didn't add up, offshore bank account numbers, hidden compartments in her home office. The files on her computer were encrypted, but the forensics team cracked them open within days. Inside were videos, hundreds, some recorded from hidden cameras inside the daycare, others from Mr. Rowe's collection. They documented years of abuse, deliberate, systematic, organized. My aunt hadn't just allowed it, she had orchestrated it. Emma's file was among them. So were others, children with speech delays, with behavioral disorders, kids who couldn't articulate what had happened because they thought no one would believe them or didn't have the words. I testified to the police about the tapping, about the Morse code. At first, they didn't know what to make of it, so I showed them. I wrote out every message I could remember. Then I demonstrated live how she'd done it, tapping quietly under the table, while reading stories, while serving snacks, while playing music. They were stunned. They brought in a Morse code expert to verify the patterns. He confirmed them, said they weren't random, said they were structured, repeated, consistent, said this wasn't accidental, it was planned communication. Eventually, it became key evidence. The tapping showed intention, it showed planning, it showed that she didn't just look the other way. She gave the orders, she chose the victims, she coordinated everything. Mr. Rowe was arrested the same day as my aunt. His cooperation came quickly. He wanted a plea deal in exchange for leniency. He offered everything: names, dates, contacts in other cities, even leads on other rings operating similarly. It turned out this wasn't just one sick man and a twisted daycare, it was a hub, a feeder, a source for a network operating across state lines. My aunt was supplying children to others, all under the guise of being a saint. The news went national. I stayed quiet, didn't give interviews, didn't post anything. I stayed with Emma and her foster parents. I went to therapy. I tried to sleep, but nightmares kept me up. I dreamed of her fingers tapping in the dark, of Emma's silent tears, of the camera bag that felt like poison. I was asked to testify in court, so I met with prosecutors. They coached me On how to stay calm, how to explain the Morse code clearly, how to answer difficult questions. I practiced until my throat was sore. I watched videos of myself decoding taps. I cried in private, but I kept going because the kids deserved it. The community had changed. People were no longer blind. New protocols were passed. Statewide daycares now required unannounced inspections. All staff needed background checks and dual cameras. Parents were encouraged to stay involved, to ask questions, to never assume. Kindness meant safety. Emma slowly started recovering. She began drawing little scribbles at first, then stick figures under the sun, then rainbows. Then she drew me and herself holding hands. Her foster parents officially adopted her 6 months after the arrest. She started speaking softly, timidly, but real words. Her first full sentence to me was, "You stayed." And I did, even when it nearly broke me, even when it cost me friends, because not everyone believed me. Some people still supported my aunt. They said I had made it up. They said I was jealous of her success. They said I was unstable, even after the evidence, even after the arrest, even after Mr. Rose's confession. They clung to their idea of her because she had seemed so perfect, because believing the truth meant facing the fact that they had missed the signs. But I knew, and so did Emma, and that was enough. Vicky took it hard. She blamed herself, said she should have known. She had been sent on errands during the special sessions. She thought it was routine. She cried when she learned the truth. Then she turned that guilt into something good. She opened her own licensed home daycare with strict rules, with open doors, with full transparency. She worked closely with parents. She made safety her #1 priority. I admired her for it. I went back to college to finish my degree in early childhood education. My story was added to textbooks, case studies, training seminars, how predators hide in plain sight. They called it. I didn't mind if it helped save one child. It was worth reliving. The trial began a year later. My aunt sat in court in an orange jumpsuit, hair unstyled, eyes hollow, but still defiant, still cold, still tapping her fingers on the table until the judge ordered her to stop. The courtroom was packed. Parents, advocates, reporters, survivors. I took the stand. My voice shook at first, but I looked at Emma in the front row and I steadied. I told them everything: the tapping, the code, the day of the camera bag, how I pretended to be dumb to stay in the room, how I waited for the moment to act, how I pressed the emergency call while smiling like everything was normal. The jury watched silently. The judge took notes. Then Mr. Rowe testified. He didn't cry, he didn't apologize, he just spoke cold, flat. He explained how they selected children, how they filmed, how they shared. Parents sobbed in the courtroom, some left in the middle. Therapists showed graphs of regression journals from kids in therapy, drawings of bad rooms and scary ladies, photos of children before and after their time at the daycare. The difference was unbearable. My aunt's defense tried to discredit me, said I had mental health issues, said I misunderstood. The tapping, said I had a vendetta, but the evidence buried them. Too many files, too many photos, too many voices. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They returned guilty on all counts, sentenced to life without parole. Mr. Rowe received decades, but not life. He'd turned on her too early for maximum sentence. The daycare building was demolished 3 months later. In its place, a community garden was built. A memorial stone was placed near the entrance in memory of the children who were hurt, in honor of those who fought to protect them. Emma helped plant the first flower. She smiled at me and said, "It's our garden now," and it was. I thought it would be over after the sentencing. I thought I would feel peace, but healing is never instant. It comes slowly, like light creeping through curtains after a long night. The media faded. Eventually, the reporters stopped calling. The online trolls moved on to something else. But the damage lingered in the quiet moments, in Emma's bad dreams, in the way some people still avoided eye contact in town, like they didn't know whether to thank me or blame me. I stopped caring what they thought. I focused on Emma, on my education, on building something better. Emma thrived. Her speech improved. She made friends. She told jokes. She started playing music. She danced in the kitchen with her foster mom. She painted pictures of sunshine. She stopped checking over her shoulder. We visited the garden every week. She watered the flowers. She told me which ones were hers. Her confidence grew, and with it, so did mine. I started speaking at seminars. I told the Morse code story, not to relive the trauma, but to teach others what silence can hide, that small things, a tap, a glance, can mean everything. I told people to listen, really listen. I told teachers to trust their instincts, to trust the children, to ask questions, even uncomfortable ones. Not everyone liked what I had to say. Some thought it was too dark, too heavy, but the ones who needed it, they listened, and some even changed things in their own schools. I met survivors from other states. Some had been in similar daycares, some had grown up carrying Invisible scars, we cried together, we laughed too, because we'd survived, because we were still here. Emma's drawings got better one day. She drew herself with a cape. She said she was a helper, now she wanted to keep other kids safe. She said I gave her that courage. I cried for a long time. That night I started dating someone I met at a training event. He was a preschool teacher too. He listened without needing all the details. He never asked for more than I was ready to give. He just stayed patient and kind. He built birdhouses with Emma. He helped me start a non-profit center for trauma-informed care. We called it the Beacon, because sometimes all you need is one small light. Emma helped paint the mural on the wall. She picked the colors. She made the sun extra bright. She said it needed to be warm because some kids forget what warm feels like. She wasn't wrong. We hired therapists, social workers, educators trained in empathy, not just policy. We offered free consultations to foster families. We created sensory rooms and healing gardens. Parents cried when they walked in. Some told us they finally felt safe. Some told us their children smiled again for the first time in months. Every time I walked those halls, I remembered why I kept going, why I didn't run, why I stayed. I married my partner in the community garden. Emma was our flower girl. She made her own dress with sparkles and lace. She cried during the vows and said she was happy. I found a good person. I hugged her tight and whispered that she would always have a family with us. When I got pregnant, she was the first to know. She drew a picture of our baby before I even showed. She wrote hope above it in big crayon letters. We kept the name. It felt right. Emma became a big sister figure overnight. She read books to my belly. She practiced lullabies. She told the baby stories about heroes and gardens and light. When Hope was born, Emma held her first. She looked at me and said, "We'll keep her safe too." And we did. As the years passed, the Beacon grew. We opened a second location in another city. We trained dozens of professionals. We published our model so other communities could follow it. Emma started volunteering with younger kids. She sat with them during hard days. She told them her own story, gently and with care. She never told them everything, just enough to say, "I understand." She said the rest wasn't their burden to carry. She knew how to make them feel seen. She had a gift. One day she told me she wanted to become a social worker. She said she wanted to be the adult she needed back then. I told her she already was. Hope started walking around that time. She followed Emma everywhere. Emma taught her signs and songs and how to plant flowers. Our house was filled with art and laughter and healing. But the past never fully disappears. One morning, we got a letter. It was from prison, from my aunt. She had written a long apology, or something like it. It was full of excuses of pain she claimed to have carried, of childhood trauma, of regrets. She never asked for forgiveness, just said she hoped we were okay. I didn't respond, but I didn't burn the letter either. I kept it in a drawer as a reminder that people can wear masks for decades, that evil can look like kindness, that monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, smiling and gentle, well-spoken and trusted. Sometimes they run daycares. Sometimes they sit beside you at church. That's why I tell my story. That's why I teach. That's why I listen. That's why I watch closely when others won't. Because I remember, and because remembering keeps others safe. Margaret died in prison 2 years later. There was no obituary, just a legal notice in a small town paper. No funeral, no flowers. No one claimed her remains. She vanished like smoke. Her legacy was not her name. It was the rules that changed. Because of her, the systems that updated, the safeguards that were finally enforced, the children that stayed safe. Because someone finally listened. Because someone finally asked why a little girl cried every time the camera came out. Because someone remembered how to translate a forgotten language of light and taps. Emma started college this year. She chose psychology. She wants to help children find their voices. She already helps more than she knows. She visits the garden every spring. She sits by the memorial stone and talks to it. She says it helps her feel calm. Hope runs through the paths, chasing butterflies. Sometimes she picks the flowers and says sorry later. We let her because she's growing up in a world that fought to protect her, because she's surrounded by survivors, because she's safe. Sometimes I still wake up in cold sweat thinking I hear tapping. Sometimes I still feel fear in the back of my throat, but then I hear Hope laughing or Emma singing, and I remember we made it out. We built something better. We planted light in the place where darkness once lived, and it's blooming every single day.